Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the first of my end of season waffles for 2023. Now, in case you are new to the channel, these are not reviews. They are just a few of my thoughts on how I think each team and driver got on this year, with a few stats sprinkled in as well. So please don't expect any kind of deep dive into each of their seasons. I just like to have a good old waffle once the season has finished, as opposed to in season where I do nothing but waffle, but you know my point. Just to let you know as well, this year, rather than one video per team, I'll be posting 5 videos with multiple teams featured in 4 of them, with video 5 being all about Red Bull, the champions of course. And following this one, these will be out every Thursday at 4 PM GMT until the end of the year. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's get started. And in today's video, I'm talking about the bottom 3 teams in the standings, and they are Haas, Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri. As always with these, we'll go in reverse championship order, so we'll be starting with Haas and their return to the bottom of the standings. What a strange season they've had. The car clearly had some decent one-lap paces demonstrated by their strong qualifying performances throughout the year. However, when it came to race pace, they just fell away completely. Look at the season finale in Abu Dhabi as almost the perfect way to sum up their year. Nico Hulkenberg started 8th but just went backwards once the lights went out and ended up finishing in P15. Now, the issue is well documented, and nobody at the team has tried to hide the fact that overheating tyres was the major problem in 2023. The drivers just had a constant battle to get them in the right window to maximise performance, but no matter what they tried with setup or what updates were brought to the car, they could not solve the issues, and that really dictated the team's season. At the end of the day, if your tyres aren't working, you're going to struggle to be competitive, and in some ways, I suppose you could argue, it's almost like the drivers were trying to take the fight to those around them with one arm tied behind their back. I really hope they can get on top of the issues for next season though, because as I said at the start, the car has some good pace that the drivers just weren't able to demonstrate on race day. The funny thing is though, things did actually start well for them, with them picking up 8 points from the opening 5 races, but they only managed 4 from round 6 in Monaco to the finale at Yas Marina, and 3 of those came thanks to a 6th place finish in the Austria Sprint, and they haven't scored since Kevin Magnussen took 10th place in Singapore. Overall, don't think this is a controversial statement, a very disappointing season for the team, and I have to say, given they wrote off 2021 to focus on the new rules, and yes, even stopped development on last year's car early to focus on this year, it's really disappointing to see them back at the bottom of the standings. Is that just where Haas are always going to be, sort of P8, 9, 10 in the championship? Or do changes need to be made somewhere to help them move forward? That's perhaps a topic for another day though. On the drivers, it was a mixed bag, really. I don't know how you feel. Let me know down in the comments, but I was really underwhelmed by Kevin Magnussen this season. Yeah, fine. His end to 2022 wasn't spectacular, but he seemed stronger overall last year than he did in 23. To be fair, it was always going to be tough given the problems with specifically the tyres, as already mentioned, so I think he should be cut a little bit of slack for that. But he was well beaten by his teammate, who hasn't been in F1 full-time since 2019. That's not great. I don't really honestly know what I was expecting other than, well, more than he delivered. As many of you will know, I like K-Mag a lot, but I'm just really disappointed with how he did, especially up against his teammate, which we'll touch on in a moment. As I always like to do for all the drivers in these end-of-season waffles, let's have a look at his season stats and averages. They are not great, especially when compared to his teammate, again, as you'll see when we get to Hulkenberg, but he had an average qualifying position of 15.09 and an average race finish of 14.76, which was actually only about 0.7 worse than his teammate in fairness, and he managed to pick up just 3 points all year with a best finish of P10. As for Nico Hulkenberg, when you consider he had all the same issues to battle against that Magnussen had and the added element of returning to the sport full-time for the first time in 3 years, I actually think he did a very solid job this year. He out-qualified, out-raced and outscored his teammate. He also picked up the team's best Sunday result of the year with P7 in Australia, which of course, as I'm sure you remember, had that dramatic end to the race. Coming into this year, of the 2 drivers, he was the one I expected to struggle the most, but I was wrong. Was it the perfect season? No. Will I remember this as one of his best years? Also no. But the first goal for any driver in any season is to beat your teammate, and he did that pretty solidly in the end for the most part. His stats are better than Magnussen's, particularly when it comes to qualifying with an average quali position of 12.13, but again, he was only marginally better in race trim with an average finish of 14.05. Perhaps further highlighting the difference between the car over 1 lap versus the race distance, it certainly highlights just how much better Hulkenberg was in qualifying than his teammate. He scored 9 points over the course of the year and also won the teammate qualifying battle 15-7 and won 13-9 in the race battle overall. So here's my question to you. Was it that Magnussen was much better come race day, or are the numbers closer on a Sunday because Hulkenberg went backwards because of the car's issues? Let me know what you think, but I'd say it's closer to the latter, as much as I would love to be positive and say it was Magnussen who was just better in race trim. Moving on to Alfa Romeo, and I have no idea what to say really. Somebody mentioned in the chat on the Abu Dhabi reaction that this was very much the typical Sauber season, so a decent start, but they ultimately fell away as the season went on, very much like last year. And I think that's a relatively fair assessment, but they didn't start anywhere near as strongly as they did in 2022, so perhaps this year the drop-off wasn't quite so dramatic. Looking at the numbers only, they scored 9 points in the opening 8 races with a season equal best P8 in the opening round in Bahrain, and in the remaining 14 races they scored 7 points. So there was definitely a drop-off, but not as dramatic as I thought in terms of the points scored. But they definitely seemed less competitive as the season went on, and at times they were just sort of there. To be fair though, for parts of the season, Alfa did actually have a car on the fringes of the points, so around 11th, 12th place, and that includes 4 P12s in a row between Austria and Belgium, so perhaps it wasn't as bad as it felt at times, but what really hurt them in 2023 was the lack of development over the season, certainly compared to their rivals, so it was really inevitable that they were going to fall away the longer the season went on. They are certainly a team in transition, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the partnership with Audi brings, but I hope we don't have to wait until then to see Sauber take a step forward, and with the team confirming they are bringing a completely new car for next season, it would be great to see them be more competitive come 2024. On to the drivers, and a little bit like Magnussen, I suppose, I expected more from Bottas. The car was not great, I don't think anyone will claim it was, but I certainly thought he'd be able to maximise what he had underneath him. I don't think it was a completely horrific year, not at all. He beat his teammate in all the head-to-heads and was ahead in the averages, we'll get to those in a second, but only 4 top 10 finishes across a 22-race season, that was quite a surprise. Again though, it's got to be said, it wasn't like he was a million miles away from picking up more points than he did. I mean, there were 6 occasions he finished 11th or 12th, so maybe that's just all the car had, and maybe he did actually get all he could out of it. And yeah, thinking about it, it could be the case that because of his F1 experience and some of the drives we've seen from him in the past, maybe that gives me a higher expectation. I think we're all guilty of that at times, but to reiterate the point, it wasn't a bad season. I just expected a lot more. His averages kind of point to that as well, with an average qualifying position of 13.8 and race finish of 13.36. He also picked up 10 points for a championship finish of P15 come the end of the year. Zhou Guanyu had an okay season, albeit losing out to his teammate over the course of 2023, but I guess what I mean by okay season is that he again seems to have taken a little bit of a step forward. Not massive, but I do think there has been an overall improvement, and so as I said in the summer, I think he earned that contract extension, keeping him at the team for next season. He did seem to struggle versus Bottas in qualifying, perhaps not a massive surprise given how quick the finish shown he can be over one lap, but things were much closer on a Sunday. So, Zhou's average qualifying position was 15.86, about 2 positions worse than his teammate, but his race finish average was 13.42, which is actually just 0.6 worse than Bottas. Not bad. He also managed to pick up points at 3 races, one off Bottas's 4, and scored 6 points. I will add, though, that neither driver scored anything since the double points finish in Qatar, with the best result of P12 in Austin for Bottas. It felt towards the end like it was very much a case of trying to get to the end of the year with more than an eye on next season for Alfa, who, of course, dropped that Alfa Romeo badge from the name in 2024 and become Sauber again. And finally, for this end of season waffle, it is AlphaTauri, and I think we can call their 2023 a season of 2 halves. They had an okay start with Yuki Tsunoda, if you remember, finishing inside the top 11 in each of the first 5 races and picked up a couple of points as well. But things tailed off from there for a while before they bought their new update, which saw them take a big step forward and gave them a strong end to the year with 18 points from Sunday races, 3 from the Brazil Sprint and 1 for fastest lap in Austin, for a total of 22 points from the final 8 race weekends versus 3 from the previous 14. It launched them off the bottom of the table up to P8 and not far off Williams in P7, an impressive turnaround. Of course, they have had 4 drivers behind the wheel as well, with Nyck de Vries getting the chop after just 10 races and was replaced by Daniel Ricciardo. Liam Lawson stood in for Ricciardo following the Aussies' crash at Zandvoort, Yuki Tsunoda being the only AlphaTauri driver to complete the whole season. We talked about it a lot at the time, so I'll keep it brief, but I do still think moving de Vries on, while perhaps harsh after just 10 races, was the right thing to do. He struggled a lot and made mistakes, sure, but also Ricciardo and Lawson were both immediately up to speed when they got their chances, and so with the benefit of hindsight, that makes it seem even more like the right choice as far as I'm concerned. It would have been interesting, though, I will say this, to see de Vries in an upgraded car. What could he have done? We'll never know, of course. And Liam Lawson, insert bias here, did a super job in his 5 races with a couple of 11th place finishes and a P9 in Singapore, which gave him a couple of points and a result that at the time was the best of the season for the team. As for the 2 now full-time drivers, or as full-time as any driver ever gets in the Red Bull sister team, Yuki Tsunoda, I think, has once again taken another really good step forward this season. I'd actually say he led the team well and performed solidly to ensure the first half of the year wasn't a complete write-off. And like I said earlier, he had that run of 5 straight top 11 finishes at the start of the season and picked up all 3 of the team's points in the first 12 races. He was certainly pushed harder on a Sunday by Liam Lawson than he was by Nyck de Vries, and things have been much closer with Daniel Ricciardo than they were with the Dutchman, so I will throw this caveat in there. How much of that step forward is genuine? How much of that is down to Yuki being strong and de Vries not really getting up to speed? I suppose the short version of that is, did de Vries flatter him a little bit? Either way, I think his third year has seen some improvement, so much so that he's now on the radar of other teams, so that can only be a good thing for him. His averages are okay, 13.4 for his average qualifying position, 12.26 was his average race finish, and he ended the season in 14th place in the championship with 17 points in total. Not a bad tally when you consider how that car was in the first half or more of the year. And actually, if you're interested, 14 of those points were scored post-summer break, specifically across the final 5 race weekends. As for Daniel Ricciardo, not a huge amount to say, honestly, given he didn't get his first start until Belgium and then had to sit out 5 races due to injury. But I've got to say, he really did a solid job in the 7 races he had this season. He picked up 6 points thanks to that 7th place finish in Mexico, where, if you remember, he qualified in 4th place. Yeah, he did lose the teammate head-to-heads, but only by 1 point, 4-3 across the board, which again, given he only had 7 races, wasn't bad at all. Naturally, given his experience and the raw speed Red Bull keeps saying is there, the expectations will be high for next year, but all things considered, I think he did a good job. And just to round off, his averages for the 7 races, by the way, came in at 14 for qualifying, and he had an average race finish of 12.71. And just for comparison, in the head-to-head between the two of them in just the 7 races, they were teammates, obviously. Ricciardo was only around 0.3 off Tsunoda on average in quali, with a gap of 1.3 between them on a Sunday. I think that's fairly solid. That is it then for the first end-of-season waffle of the year, but let me know down in the comments section how you think Haas, Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri got on in 2023. Now, I will be back soon with some more content, and as I mentioned at the start, the rest of these will be out every Thursday at 4 PM GMT between now and the end of the year. In the meantime, though, if you did enjoy this one, then please do leave a like, as it really does help the channel out, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos or streams. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.